Alrighty. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Michelle Ratcliffe, and I am the Director of Communications and Operations for We Are Ill. And I'm very excited to be here speaking with Wanda Castro-Borrero. She is our board member. So, Wanda, can you um, introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Ashley. And nice to meet you all. My name is Wanda Castro-Borrero. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico. I am a really very proud Puerto Rican is what I always said when people ask me where I'm from. And saying that, I want to send un abrazo solidario, a really big hug to all the Puerto Ricans and Dominicans due to Hurricane Fiona and all the destruction it did in our islands, and also to our friends in Mexico, because of the recent earthquake. So we are with you, and we're praying for you all. So, as I said, I'm a very proud Puerto Rican, and I am a pharmacist and a neurologist by training. I was in practice for about 7 years between Dallas, Texas, and Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. And I joined Biogen currently. That is my job as a medical director, and I'm in the global side, basically with most of the MS medications on my end. And that's a little bit of who I am.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we're so excited to be in conversation with you in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. So, and also so happy to have you on board as a member of We Are Ill's board. So, why did you decide to join us?
Well, I believe on the mission and the vision of We Are Ill. I feel identified. I had so many Black and Hispanic and minority patients that I treated during my 7 years in practice, and when I was a resident and fellow. And I believe that we need to ensure that we're all counted for, right? And we need to have a special dedication to our communities of color, because it's a little bit different. The MS is different in the communities. The way that we need to talk with the patients is different as well. So if I can do a little bit and give a little bit of my thoughts and ideas, that is it's a plus.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're so happy to have you and really appreciate all the value that you bring to us. So, take us back. What initially inspired you to become a neurologist, and did wanting to serve your community of Puerto Ricans or the Latino community factor into your career choice?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born and raised, as I said, in Puerto Rico, and I come from a very, very, very humble beginnings, right? We were very poor. I always said we sometimes have just white rice and ketchup on the table. But that I didn't know I was poor, but I do know that my mom always was like, "You need to study. You need to study." And my mom was a single mom. I have a twin sister. We live with my grandparents, which is something that happens a lot in Hispanic communities. We are all this like all blended together in the same house, or somehow. And I want to be a doctor always, but for some reason I went into pharmacy school because it was quicker. I worked for 5 years, but really being a doctor was what was on my heart. So I went back and I went to med school. And once in med school, I would say neurology was big. My grandfather has 3 strokes. My grandmother had Parkinson's. My twin sister has a CNS demyelinating disorder. So I was very in tune with neurology, and that's what I went into neurology. Once I was a resident in the University of Connecticut, it was evident that the large Hispanic population, and one reason I went to Hartford is like 33% of the population were Hispanic. So we have a mercado, we have the bakeries. So it was great. It was like being in Puerto Rico. I speak in Spanish too, so it was really nice being there. So it's a large Hispanic community, and they have a lot of needs, right? Especially Spanish speaking providers. And that fuel me into different things. When I moved to Dallas, then it was a more mix. I have a lot of Black African American patients as well as Hispanics, because there was then in Texas the large population of people from Central America and Mexico predominantly. So it was my passion, and I was able to see what were the issues that were happening with the patients. And through the years, I find out how can I better serve the community, right? I'm doing a lot of different things. And at some point, I decided to leave clinic and I went to Biogen, which is a pharmaceutical company. And there, I'm also very heavily involved in work that is for our Hispanics and African American communities, as well as Asian communities too. So that is kind of, and I hope I answered your question, but that is how I came into being a neurologist. I came into love health equity. I saw the disadvantages that our communities have, right? And how to fight for them to have their access to quality care.
Yeah. So can you go into your work with Biogen? What are some of the things that you're working on, or what are some of the things that you're proud of accomplishing with
Yeah.
Biogen?
Definitely. And something I want to clarify here is that, I work at Biogen, and I'm speaking here on my behalf. Nothing that I said is a view for the company, or I'm expressing anything in favor of the company. I just want to make that clear. So I've been at Biogen 8 years. I started as a medical director, associate medical director in the United States. Now I'm a senior medical director and global head of MS franchise, interference, fumarates, and Vampira. So basically what we do is real world evidence, make sure that we have the clinical studies, clinical analysis of our products, and also MS in general, that can serve different populations through the globe. So it's a lot about education of healthcare providers, and also a lot of research, which I think it's imperative because we don't have a lot of data on how MS and the treatments affects our communities. So it's key.
Cool. Let's see. What motivates you to advocate for the Hispanic MS community?
Well, I would say the obvious, right? I'm a Hispanic, and even though I've been teaching everybody that I cross path with, that you don't have to be Hispanic or belong to the community to be an ally and to be able to support them. And I would say, through the years, Hispanics, very similar to Blacks and African Americans, we have suffered from health inequities, and we have been tested. Something that for me is key is women in Puerto Rico. 1/3 of the women in Puerto Rico were sterilized, because forced sterilization, because they believed that they were just reproducing too much. So to be able to find a job, and this was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, to be able to get a job, you need to have a sterilization so you don't have children. And those were things that marked the community. Another part, women in Puerto Rico were one of the first groups to be treated with oral contraceptives before the women in the United States. Why? Because we want to see how this works for you, and then we treat our people. So I think those have marked the history. And that makes me more to be an advocate, because we need Hispanics to be on clinical trials. We need our representation. We need to ensure that the drugs that are produced by pharma works for everybody. And the main way to do this is that we participate, but we need to our communities need to understand what's happening. So it's my passion, not because I'm just Hispanic, but also because I have seen the inequities and I want to make sure that we are well represented.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't even heard of that, what they were doing with women in Puerto Rico. There's so many like horrible things that our people, both Latinos and African Americans, Black people, have experienced with the
Yes.
healthcare system. And it's like so deeply embedded, right? And wow, like that just blew my mind. Um, so speaking about just the Hispanic community, and I know that you served a great deal of Hispanic MS patients. What were some of the cultural factors that came into play when you were treating patients living with MS?
Yes, definitely. And I would say these are things that people need to understand, that you cannot talk to the to every patient group the same, right? So you need to be cultural competent to work with different race and ethnicities. Hispanics, we are, in a way, patients came to me and, well, Dr. Castro, what would you do? If I was your mom, what would you treat me? And then it's like this, well, I cannot tell you what to do. We need to have a shared decision making. I tell you the things, right? I always believe that if you are told to do something, you will not do it as well. But many of the Hispanics, more than 50% of them, this was data from approximately, that was a 2010 data, showed that they want the doctors to tell them what to do. They go blindly trusting you, about 50% of the patients. But then the other part that is imperative is like Hispanics community, we are very family driven, right? So you need to inform, as a provider, I needed to inform the whole family. They all needed to know what's the disease. It's not the disease of Wanda, it's the disease of my whole family. So everybody is going to have an opinion and everybody's going to have to say something. And importantly, grandparents are key in many things that we do. The abuela, el abuelo, they might not understand what's happening, but they need to be informed and how this is going to affect the whole family dynamics and how the treatment is going to affect. So you just need to be open to have these conversations with the whole community, the whole family. I always recall one time I was in the ICU with a patient that had a stroke, and when I go to the I'm exiting, and I look at the family room, and there was all this Hispanic family with a caldero of rice with pigeon peas, and everybody was kind of having this party there, and people were looking at me, Wanda, what's happening there? I said, well, won't their grandparent is in the ICU with a stroke, so the family is all gathering in here. And I said, but how? I said, well, that's the way it is. Everybody comes together. So
Right. And I bet you it helped a lot that you spoke the language. I hear a
yes,
lot that, it's hard for people because of the language barrier, right? You have maybe the patient speaks English, but the abuelo, the grandparents, the parents, they don't. So I'm sure that was really
A
helpful
hundred
for them.
percent. Yes, 100%. And that's why we need more healthcare providers that speak the language, right? Sometimes you have a translator, but it's never the same. And the other part that is that you don't want children translating for the adults, right? Because it's a family, but you don't want the little kids to know what's happening. It's usually the adults. But yeah, the language was key. I have a lot of patients when I have a more larger practice that waited because they want to see me because I speak the language and I know a little bit about the culture too.
Right.
That is another key thing. You can have maybe an American person that speaks Spanish and they can communicate, but they might not understand the full aspects of the culture. And it's nothing against that. It's just that they prefer to have someone that speaks the language, knows the culture. And that is important.
Yeah. What advice do you have for Hispanic patients navigating doctors who may not understand their culture or just Spanish?
Yes, yes. I would say, and this might not be as easy because there are not as many like me, right? That are, or I'm not longer in practice, but I know some colleagues that are in practice that speak Spanish and coming from countries that speak Spanish. If you cannot find someone that is close to you, right, that speaks the language, I would say try to navigate to a place that either has the translator services and translator services, people that are that understand not only what you're saying but also the culture. Always go with someone that speaks maybe a little bit more English than you to the clinic. That I think it's key, even though you don't want others to make decisions for you, but it's always good to have another backup. And so looking for that, looking for this, and try to get as much information as possible, right? Another data that I think it's important is about 50% of Hispanic patients, they will not use online services or internet, right? So they still read them paper, so they want things written in Spanish. So make sure that when you go to the office, you ask, hey, what data? Give me something in Spanish so I can read more about the disease, about the treatments, and that is very, very important.
Yeah. When you were a neurologist, how did you help encourage your Latino or Hispanic patients to advocate for themselves?
Yes. So one of the most important things is I wanted them to understand the disease. If they don't understand what's happening with them, they cannot advocate for themselves, right? So I wanted them to be well, and I educated many of them on what was the disease, what were the treatments, where places to find. There are some advocacy groups. Most of the advocacy groups has Spanish services, right? And they also have pamphlets and information in Spanish that they can mail to your home, and they have plenty of resources. So the more that you learn about the disease, the more that you're able to find the resources, the more you can advocate for yourself. So, and I'm not, I will not say the names of all the different advocacy groups, right? But the major advocacy groups always have a Spanish group, like and the different ones they have. So make sure that you understand where to go and get help, and they can also help you find a healthcare provider that speaks Spanish close to you. So those are important things.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question is I know you can't list them all, but like top of mind, where would be a good starting place for Hispanic patients living with MS? Is there like a network of Hispanic neurologists or which organization would you
Okay.
recommend?
Yeah. So I would say some of the advocacy groups, and I hope that others don't say one that you forgot to mention me, but I will say three that comes to mind is the National MS Society, right? They have the navigators and they speak Spanish. So if you go to the website, you might have some. You can do it in Spanish. Those that go to online searches. But if not, you can ask your provider, hey, what is the National MS Society number? And you can just contact them and ask to speak with someone who speaks Spanish. There's also the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America, MSAA, that also have some online services and pamphlets, very good information in Spanish for patients to get well educated. Someone that I use a lot when I was in Connecticut for my patients was the MS Foundation in Florida, because they have a lot of pamphlets in Spanish. So in every topic related to MS, sexual dysfunction, bowel, bladder. So I usually, and they send it to me for free. So I always had them in the clinic so patients can take those pamphlets and those little books and take and read about it. So those are, I would say those three come to mind that are very good resources for patients to look into it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I wanted to note that the MS Society recently on September 15th had their Hispanic MS Experience Summit. And I imagine it was awesome. They did one for the Black MS experience. And those were always helpful just to learn from like, what MS looks like for Black patients. And so it's awesome that they did that for Hispanic patients. I encourage you all viewers to go and check that out. They usually post the recordings of the different sessions. So if you weren't able to tune in live, it should be listed on their website at this point. And I think that brings us to the end of our conversation. Is there any final thoughts that you wanted to share, Wanda?
Well, I would say yes. I would say because I've been focusing on those that only speak Spanish, but we know there are a lot of Hispanics, right, that are second generation that have been here in the States for a while that speak English, right? So these resources are the same. If you speak Spanish, you can go to any of these advocacy groups and they have the same information in English. And I would say, remember that even though you speak English and you were born here in the US and you know the culture of the US, you are unique in the sense that you have this Hispanic culture in you. You're able to talk to your parents and grandparents, maybe broken Spanish, hopefully not, but you can speak that Spanish with them. So you are just unique and use all this uniqueness is your superpower to do things, right? And move forward. Advocate for yourself, take a seat at the table, be prepared when you're talking with providers about your disease and how things are, and don't take note for an answer. Maybe that is not the provider for you and you can just have to move and look for the next provider that really is going to understand you and help you.
Yes, I'm a huge proponent for firing your doctor. If they are not serving you, cut them, find someone better.
Totally, totally. And I would say also, well, Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th is the way to celebrate our culture. It's basically celebrating independence, right, of these Central American countries. But we are embrace it because this is a time for us to shine and to show the world the great things that we Hispanics, Latinos can do to improve the world. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Wanda. This was so much fun. And I'm so glad that we got to introduce our community to you. And thanks for everything that you're doing with us and for
Oh,
the community of MS patients. So
thank you too, Ashley. Thank
have
you.
a good one.
You too.